I'm Kathy Smith, the director of the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society here at Community College of Philadelphia. Today's Perspectives interview is conducted by David Travaskis, who is an adjunct faculty member here and is the pro bono counsel for the Pennsylvania Bar Association. He's also a member of the Center's advisory board. In today's interview, David speaks to the Honorable Annette Rizzo. Judge Rizzo sits on the Court of Common Pleas for Philadelphia County in the Civil Major Trial Program. We have been very fortunate to have Judge Rizzo appear at the Center's Law and Society Week on several occasions to share her thoughts on law, life, balance. She's also champion of the much-honored mortgage foreclosure program, which strives to help those who have been impacted by the recession in Philadelphia. In this conversation, however, the judge talks about yet another interest of hers, nursery stories, the Trial of Goldilocks, and other stories that she uses in working with elementary school children.
Welcome to the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society's Perspectives series on CCP TV, the educational channel of the Community College of Philadelphia. I am David Travaskis, an adjunct professor here in the Paralegal Studies program at the college. Today it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest, Judge Annette Rizzo of the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas. Good morning, Your Honor.
Good morning, David. How are you?
This is great. I wanted to just start out by having you explain to the audience what you do as a judge.
Well, I do a lot of things. Actually, I've been on the bench since 1999, and I now sit in the civil program. So I handle civil major jury trials. But as well, I oversee the mortgage foreclosure diversion program in the court system. And basically, it's been a program reaching its 6th year in June, where no homeowner in Philadelphia can have their home go to sheriff's sale if they are in default of their mortgage, without having what's called a conciliation conference. So it's a whole wired up system that comes into the court so you can have a face-to-face discussion, you as homeowner with your lender servicer, to see if you can work out a deal and stay in your home.
And that foreclosure program is actually something we have covered in the past on the Perspective series, and it would be wonderful to talk to you about that for our entire show. But I actually am much more interested today in hearing from you about some of the odd people who have been showing up in your courtrooms.
Yes, we handle a whole slate of cases, criminal and civil, but particularly on the criminal docket, which I held some years ago, we did have some interesting defendants come into the courtroom.
And I'm sure people in the audience are now wondering what we're talking about, because a person who depends on being elected and then re-elected by the people isn't going to normally call the people who come to her court odd. Yeah. But I'm now talking about some of the people, some of the litigants who were in your courtroom, Goldilocks and some of these folks. So why don't you tell the audience about your special program?
Yeah, so yes, we have been the center for the trial of some pretty extraordinary cases involving some pretty famous defendants, Goldilocks, B.B. King, Mr. Bad Wolf, and as well Jack of Jack and the Beanstalk. So 3 criminal defendants actually come into our courtroom every year to commemorate Law Day, which we celebrate in our court system, which is a beautiful celebration, acknowledgement of all the wonderful resources that come through our legal system for each and every one of us in the community.
And these fairy tale mock trials that you do, and you said these are all the parts of the way that the local judicial district celebrates Law Day. How did you get the idea to try these people?
So the idea was many years ago, back in 2005, when I had children at a small age. They were actually in pre-K. 2 things actually came to play. I wanted my sons, who were twins at the time, still twins, to come into the court system just to see what mommy does at work. But it was more than that, because to me it was evident that Law Day, which is such a significant date, such a significant celebration, acknowledgement all over the country of what law means to all of us. There was never a program that quite fit that age group, what I call the pre-K, the early education years. There were wonderful systems set up, mock trials all over the country throughout the year, and many in Philadelphia, our school system for high school, for middle school, but nothing really hit that small community. And so my vision was, why don't we have something that's geared to that age group? So we really have as part of our most early citizens an acknowledgement and an involvement with them right in the court system to see how our jury system works, so that they too can become familiar with it and situated. And I have to tell you, over the years, there are amazing stories from parents and even children who are older who have come back and have gotten that spark of interest in law, because they do remember these programs. They do remember they were part of a trial that actually went from beginning of jury selection up to verdict and even sentencing, if in fact our defendants were found guilty.
Right, they don't get sentenced if they're not found guilty, and that's a good
right.
thing for the kids to learn. Now you bring elementary school children then into the courtrooms of
Right.
City Hall, and you do an entire day during Law Day. And Law Day each year is May 1st for our audience watching, although in Philadelphia we tend to celebrate the rule of law throughout the month.
Right.
So you bring the children in and they see trials, but who puts on the trials?
Well, so we partner with, of course, other members of the court system, but most importantly with our Young Lawyers Division of the local Philadelphia Bar Association. They are tremendous. They actually staff the various trials with the actual lawyers who litigate, the parties. They actually come in great costume and regalia to make sure that the spirit of the story is told properly, and to defend or prosecute these defendants, these very famous defendants. And as well help to wire up the whole system. It takes a lot because it started out really with 20 of my son's classmates coming over for me to do a mock trial, which actually got press at that time. And the most amazing picture was put in the Inquirer at that time of one of our jurors raising his hand, but he had his juror badge over his nose, raising his hand, asking a question. That was the Goldilocks trial. Those trials were written actually by my then law clerk, Tara Nalance, who's done a wonderful job. And they tell the three stories of the fairy tales we all know and love. But
So-
we don't stop there. It actually starts when we have sort of some primers that go out to the various classrooms. So classes which are designated, and we now target second or third, but we've had as young as pre-K, obviously. We go out into the various schools. We meet with the teachers in the classrooms, and we go over the story, not just to familiarize themselves with the well-known stories they may know and love, but also our system. There's a book about the Supreme Court mouse. There's a story also that I use in a book about the Constitution to explain at their level about how there is a right to a jury trial, particularly in a case such as this, where it is the Commonwealth versus B.B. Wolf, where it is the Commonwealth versus Goldilocks and Jack and the Beanstalk. And we get them into the context of what their duty is to actually be the decision makers. It's really interesting. It's a way for them to show how conflict resolution is done in our court system, but also that they are vested decision makers to that end.
So the students don't just watch the young lawyers put on this trial and the judges actually render verdicts. They participate as jurors.
They absolutely do. So we go to the classrooms, we tee them up, we actually subpoena them. We give them actual subpoenas for the classroom.
Juror subpoenas.
Juror subpoenas.
Which our audience probably all knows, and I
it's
bet
the
these...
invitation
Right.
to actually come into court and be part of a trial, yes.
And somehow I think the second and third graders probably are more excited by getting a jury notice than some of the folks watching us today.
Well, let's hope that enthusiasm continues, and that's the whole mission. So when they get subpoenaed, they come in, and we have had classes span the entire city. Public schools from all over, private schools, charter schools, Catholic schools, everyone comes into the courtroom, and a lot of times there are requests made. So what I'm really proud about is over these last years, from 2005, we've started with a class of 20.
So this was your children's
yes.
own preschool class.
Right.
So the very first one in
Was-
2005 was that group
was
coming
the
in, 20 kids, and they were the jurors and you were the judge.
Right, and I so remember that trial because it was of Goldilocks. And in fact, Goldilocks was, we had the full trial. She testified. She was quite dramatic and very upset that she was, being put to task of what she had broken in the house.
So she was charged with breaking and entering.
breaking and entering, mussing the bed, and also breaking a stool. And we had props, we had exhibits. It was complete trial. When they came in to actually hear this case, and actually they deliberated and found her guilty.
So she
When
was found guilty.
When she started to get emotional, there was sort of a change in the mood of the jury, and some were saying, well, maybe she's not guilty. in which case we had a mistrial and we had to retry next year. And that's sort of how it came back. But over the years, we started from one class of 20 to now we have up to 7 classes. We've had up to over 300 children come in. And they go to my various colleagues who are so kind to accommodate.
So they go before actual real judges from the First Judicial District?
Yes, they do. But afterwards, we do get a chance to meet with the classrooms, and they become sort of the judge for the day if they want to, and learn how our court stenographer takes down testimony, our sheriffs, and how they operate in terms of safety in the courtroom. It is a full-blown infusion into the judicial system. So we actually start, when they're subpoenaed, to come into really what would be the jury, the main jury selection room that we would have, assembly room in the Court of Common Pleas. And we have a bit of a program. Over the years, we've had Mayor Nutter come in and former Governor Rundell speak to them about the importance of this. David, you were a guest as well in some years. And it gives them a sense of how they're called to duty. And they all are sworn in at that time and then directed to their various courtrooms to begin their service.
Oh, it's so neat. Before we go further, though, you say you have the 3 trials. So Goldilocks is up on trespassing and breaking and damaging things, breaking and entering.
Right.
What's the big bad wolf charged with?
Well, the big bad wolf is in charge with, of course, threatening these 3 little pigs and as well doing damage to various houses.
I guess he did huff and puff.
He
and
did.
Blow some houses down.
What's so interesting about his trial, I'm so fascinated by it. Part of the defense is he has his allergist testify, who comes up with a full doctor suit and talks about the fact that poor Mr. Wolf just suffers from allergies and did not mean to huff and puff, but just was overcome by what is an exhibit of the hay, for an example. And I have to tell you, there's been mixed verdicts based on the strength of that defense as presented, where he, in fact, has been acquitted.
Wow. And then Jack and the Beanstalk.
Jack is a really complicated case. It usually used to go to always our 3rd graders, our 2nd and 3rd graders. And why I say that, they don't just hear the case, and I mean the testimony, witnesses getting up in full costume to give their side of the story, cross-examination, opening statements, closing, my charge, them going out to literally deliberate with a verdict sheet of whether in fact they are criminally guilty. And I have to tell you, the Jack and the Beanstalk trial always presented some interesting issues. He was charged with taking gold coins. He was charged with breaking and entering. He was charged with harming the giant as he was chasing him down the beanstalk on his last visit up there when he was chopping it down. And often it's a mixed verdict because, quite frankly, the elements are not made out of the various charges. They absolutely listen. They absolutely take in everything they see. They are so taken by, I think, the austerity, sort of the magnitude of City Hall and as well the courtroom. They realize that they are in a special place, and they're very respectful. It's been quite an experience. Many times the classes, we arrange for some tours also of City Hall after, so they get to see where the mayor does his work or where City Council does in their chambers. So
and that's one of the great things about Philadelphia. In our City Hall, we have all 3 branches of government, all under the same roof. Now, I understand you have actually expanded this to include an all-Spanish trial for students who speak Spanish and English as their 2nd language.
Right.
Can you tell me how that came about?
Yeah, Rachel Gallegos, who was our law clerk in Chambers some years, is of Mexican background, and she thought it would be great if we actually tried to wire up a trial completely in Spanish because it's such a vital language and it's a large part of our community. And so the Independence Charter School, which has Spanish immersion, was a wonderful resource for us to find our jurors. And so they as well come in, they are selected, and work closely with the teachers who just love the exercise. They come in, and I am saying from second one that they come in to be sworn throughout the life of the trial, with the bailiff, with the sheriff, with the judge, with the prosecutor, with the defense, all witnesses, and as well their deliberations to a verdict, which is as well in Spanish, including instructions by the judge, are all completely in Spanish. And I have to tell you, if you want to see justice at work, you see these wonderful children collaborating and working through Spanish in terms of reaching a consensus in a verdict. It's really something extraordinary to see.
No, that is so exciting.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm a teacher or a parent listening to you, how could I get involved in that program? How could I get the program for my kid? if I wanted to bring it to my school, something like that, can they contact you? What can they do?
They can contact me at in City Hall, Judge Rizzo, my chambers, or they can contact really the Philadelphia Bar Association, because we really are in partnership with them. About 100 lawyers, and there are so many law day activities commit to this program. Some do it as a firm. All of them come from one firm to do an actual team in a particular classroom. So if they reach out there, that would be great, and we would love the opportunity to do it. And you know, a lot of it is coming into the austerity, again, as I say, is the grandiose center of the court system. But for those classrooms and those students and schools who cannot send their children because they're not in walking distance or have ability to be transported, we now have an ability to go out with tape. They can see these full trials with a lawyer team and a judge who goes out to tee up and talk to the children just about the court process. So it's part of our outreach of the program, although we love to bring everyone in.
So for this outreach, that's exciting. That I could get you to send a tape and send a team to the school.
Absolutely.
So what do? They watch the trial, the witnesses and everything, and then do they get the chance to be the juror?
Well, we try to do some facsimile. In other words, I should also, just to roll back a bit, this came out of a service project with the Temple American Inn of Court. And Inns of Court are throughout the country. They are steeped in British tradition, just coming back from London and going to Gray's Inn and many of the inns there. And it's a wonderful organization which brings together law students, lawyers at every level of practice, and judges to work together on ethical issues and also substantive law issues to really bond together and present programs of education and also outreach. So this Temple American Inn of Court program last year was to literally tee up with fully impressive professional costumes and reenact the Goldilocks trial, and we've gone out to schools to do it. So the students there get to understand what our program in terms of a trial is about, and then they sit as the jurors to just see the taping of the various witnesses before them, and then they deliberate as if they were in court as well. So it's an outreach where we want to extend to them if they cannot be brought to us.
Now, these programs just sound so exciting. How do you have a sense of whether they're working or not?
Well, it's so interesting. Again, as I said, I absolutely, in fact, have so many requests, more than I imagine, of young students now in middle school who want to shadow. They're very interested in the law, and we try to match these young minds, these wonderful students.
And these are kids who saw the trials
Absolutely.
when they were in younger grades,
yes.
Now are in middle school.
Yeah, and they just love the whole idea, and some have come up to me even right after it to say, one day I want to be a judge, or I want to be a lawyer. I think I shared with you that often the judges get thank you notes, and I have so many precious ones where the class was set to task after the event to express what they loved. They also love the pizza we used to serve after too as well. But for the program, they absolutely refer to certain witnesses and testimony that stuck with them and why they made certain decisions. But I share with you that often their pictures are really so telling. In particular, one where there was a layout of the entire courtroom where the parties sit, where the attorneys sit, where the jury sits, and then there was this massive bench and my little pinhead at the top. And it just showed that the enormity of how they felt that the court system had such presence in the room. And it wasn't about the person, it was just respectfulness of the court. It was really quite extraordinary. I still have it framed. I think it's just great.
Now, do you find when you ask your colleagues about this, I mean, you guys do very, very serious business. The things we were talking about at the beginning today, the foreclosure program we've done, have saved people's homes. You make decisions in civil court and in criminal court that impact families and individuals tremendously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do your colleagues appreciate this kind of effort at educating our youngest kids about the court?
Yeah, so many of my colleagues come up and ask if they can preside, because I think they find it so interesting that it's so unexpected. The questions they pose or what they find interesting. Or
like what will be a typical question a second or third grader might ask you?
Well, they actually are almost like CSI. Like, what about the fact that the stool, where is the leg that was broken that they say was broken? How did they know? Who had custody? Who held the stool to know it was broken? Somebody else could have broken the leg. Where is the food? And they have inquisitive minds just about the evidence. And then they're really interested in, say, for an example, the court stenographer, how they take the case down, how what will happen if they are found guilty. And oftentimes their sentence doesn't normally involve custody. It does involve a formal apology, reimbursement for what they broke.
So you're teaching a sense of responsibility with the sentencing.
Yeah, and they feel good about it, as opposed to feeling that this person's going to be locked away in a dungeon forever. I think they get a sense of ownership of their decision, and then are very inquisitive about what will be the next step as a result of what they have decided. So it really is taking responsibility for what they've done. But the questions are in order and just endless. They love to be the judge, right? So they love, where's my gavel, of course. So these images that are embedded in what would be public, the public conscious is really something that they gravitate towards. But if you start to ask them, in your own life, what things do you hear about? Every one you can tie to some aspect of law. It's something I know you do, David, in all your work and your teachings, which are extraordinary throughout the Commonwealth. To bring that message to everyone. Law touches all of us. And so my concern was not just because of my own personal interest in it and passion for it, to bring the law to this sector that was not really serviced in this regard. It's really to think about young children whose first introduction to the court system may be a horrific family court matter that they're brought into, or something such as that. This is different. This is them being part of the system in a way that they can actually have some buy-in. They kind of lose the sense that it's a fairy tale. It's really a named defendant who's personified in an outfit that really reflects that, and they absolutely get into what the story is, how it unfolds with the examination and the cross-examination, and they really love to hear the arguments of the counsel.
Well, it's so interesting because I think about the adult attitude towards jury service. And I just was called to jury service and went through that process. And although I love the whole process, there is, as you're sitting there, I could be doing other things. You don't always remember that you're such an important part in the process. Right. And this idea that the kids are getting that sense of service so young and having a real positive piece about it. Do you ever hear from parents about their kids' experience, and do you ever get any reflection back on whether it's changing other attitudes besides just the young children's attitudes?
I think it is, because they go home to express it to their parents. I've had an awful lot of feedback about that. That's really interesting, because they're using words with their parents, that subpoena and Constitution, and the wonderful books provided by the Pennsylvania Bar Association are incredible. I should also note, one year, it was about 2 or 3 years ago, a bus was going back with the students from it, and some teacher had snapped a shot of a student opening the Constitution, and she was reading it. And so there's this great image of her in the bus, really intimately reading the Constitution right after this great experience. So it's heart-rending, but there is discussion about it. There is a message to it, and if they have even a spark of interest in law, then we have served a great purpose.
Well, and that's one of the things I always say, is that the law is far too important to be left just to us, even to judges and to lawyers.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I agree, yes.
The young people who are future citizens, or future jurors, need to know that.
Right.
Again, now if people wanted to get involved, especially now that you have this traveling show that can go out, they can contact you directly at the court.
Right.
And would they just call your chambers?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, and can we have that number?
Yeah,
what would be the number?
215-686-2961.
2961. And if they can't reach you, they can contact the Bar Association by going to the Philadelphia Bar Association's webpage.
Right, and they will absolutely put us in contact. So
that's fantastic. Now, you've had 9 years of
Can I also just say, it doesn't necessarily have to be Law Day. I mean, I love it. It's in the month that we really commemorate all that we do in law. But it could be at any point. It doesn't have to necessarily.
So people can contact you in October, November, December.
That's right.
And you'd be able to get them a team.
Yes.
I'm curious about this team that goes out to the schools, because you have your young lawyers who handle the actual Law Day program.
Right.
And you get about 100 volunteers, you said, which is phenomenal,
yeah.
the support. But who are the teams that are going out?
Many of them are from this Inn of Court, who had that as a service project to do.
So it might include law students, lawyers at every level, and a judge.
And a judge, right. Yes, we do that, yeah.
Okay, so that's
we also get, and it's one of our court supplies, law day bags, which of course everyone loves bags, with a gavel pencil and a jury book. So they understand even the jury book, and some of them do take notes. So
during the jury.
But what I love to see is when I go through Center City, Philadelphia, sometimes I do see our students who have been in years past with us, and they're carrying their law day bags.
Oh, so that's really neat.
So even the fact that they know it was law day, and what does that refer back to? I mean, I think we're making a difference. I think we're making a statement and having something carry with them as they go forward.
Well, in the evolution of this, I doubt that President Eisenhower, when he declared the first law day back in the 1950s, ever was envisioning that there would be a trial of Goldilocks, the big bad wolf, or Jack and the Beanstalk, and have those things. Now, is there any plans for future trials, for additional trials?
I think there are in terms of concept, but we try to keep it reduced and simple and yet intriguing to our jurors. And we're thinking of a few others. And you know, the thought is maybe they go off of a fairy tale theme and into something else, which would be instructive. But somehow we gravitate back because the visual is always so compelling.
And the young lawyers already have their costumes and their plans.
Aren't lawyers all frustrated actors anyway? So I think they enjoy that as well.
Well, and it's interesting. I know in your outreach, you've been doing tremendous work for Civic Education. We happen to have in Philadelphia such a wonderful source for that. We have the National Constitution Center.
Yeah.
We have now the new Rendell Center, which is out at Arcadia University. And we have the ACE program that the Philadelphia Bar does with judges in the local schools. But this special elementary piece, and it's dear to my heart. I'm a former third grade teacher. So the idea that young people can comprehend pretty complex issues if you make it interesting and informative to them. So I really commend you for doing that.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to make sure that people know you're accessible. I think the idea that you would call a judge about your elementary school kid might seem inappropriate, but that's something you want to hear.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and our audience will follow up and they will connect with you.
Yeah, no, it's great.
So is there any final words you want to tell us, any final story that you'd like to share?
There's just, I mean, so many over the years of just, I don't think there's any one in particular. Every year there's always this like zinger question that puts everyone flattened out. But I think we'll always remain sort of, I don't want to say shocked, but surprised that the impact is there, that they really are getting everything we're saying. I remember, in fact, one prosecutor in my courtroom, when he was doing his closing remarks, very dramatically, I might add, was saying, she is not Goldilocks, she is Guilty-locks, Guilty-locks with a capital G. And actually, that was the school that I was affiliated in. And when I was at that same school later, they were all going around and mimicking that. She's Guilty-locks, she's Guilty-locks. But it turned out at the end, though she was only guilty of one charge, and her apology certainly rendered her to really be remorseful. And that's what we want. And rehabilitated. She'll never break into another home
Anybody's
again.
house again.
Yeah.
I really want to thank you for all you do to make the courts come alive for our youngest citizens. That's all the time we have today. So I do want to thank our guest, Judge Annette Rizzo from the 1st Judicial District, for joining us. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in. You have been watching the Fox Rothschild Center for Law and Society, the Perpectives series on CCP TV, the educational channel of the Community College of Philadelphia. I am David Travaskis, adjunct professor in the Paralegal Studies program. For more information, please contact us at the Community College, and we will see you next time on CCP TV.